Luncheon.
Thank you, Kostas, for this introduction. And I'm going to talk a little about, what the president is doing, but also some of the directions we were planning for this year of the society. Some of this I can go fast because we already have heard some of the report on the society activities, which several of those are related to some of the initiative I wanted to see happening. And it's good to see that it is really happening. One of the things with me as a president, which has caused a lot of problems, is, of course, my name. I thought it was only in the US. But a lot of people have problems with my name.
John Olson. Warren Olson.
Bjorn. John Olson.
Or Jane Olson. When I think about it, Bjorn Olson. Barney Olson.
Barney Olson.
Well, none of them were 100% correct, even if somebody had practiced for a year. But no matter what you call me, I will be happy to answer you and serve you during my presidential year. I'll tell a little about how I got in touch with ASRE, how I got involved with ASRE. I come from a small country called Denmark. Now, you European, I'm sure you know exactly where Denmark is. And for many years ago, Denmark was not recognized at a very good place. Shakespeare, he said there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. One of his plays, Hamlet, takes place in a castle in Denmark. Shakespeare was never there, but there is a plaque now at the castle with him. But nowadays, we have for many years been recognized as the happiest people in the world. And one of our known actors, who is in the Game of Thrones, was one time asked on a talk show in the US, why is it that Danes are the happiest people in the world? Well, his answer was, maybe it's because of low expectations. Well, I have big expectations, not about Denmark, but about ASRE and what we can do. In fact, I have heard, I think, the last evaluation, who were the happiest people, I think they said it was Norwegians. But they all go to Denmark if they want to have fun. Now, the way I got into ASRE was through the scientific part, for the research part. I met some of the prominent ASRE people coming from other universities, like Professor Gergi from Yale or Professor Nevins from Kansas State University. When I was studying at the university and working on my master, mainly on my PhD, I got in touch with papers from ASRE transactions, ASRE handbooks, and the transaction was often a place you would publish if you were looking at studies on indoor comfort. One thing, Nevins, I don't think so many of you know him. I was so happy to meet him. We have now an ASRE award named Ralph D. Nevins Award. And he was head of the time where ASRE also had a research lab. It moved from Cleveland to Kansas State University. But now we don't have our own research lab. A lot of different labs, they make ASRE research. My very first ASRE meeting was 1977 in Halifax, where I presented some of my work, and I was happy that the local newspaper even wrote an article about it. It's not always nice to be in the newspaper, but sometimes it can be okay to be in the newspaper. In fact, next March I will be going back to Halifax to the local chapter to talk to the chapter, so that will be quite interesting after all these years. I have had a couple of mentors. Mentors are important for your career and your life. I'm sure some of you know at least Professor Fanger, who I worked with since 1969 and until he died in 2006. And he was at that time involved in ASRE because he had been staying 1 year at Kansas State University, where he did a lot of his basic study for his thermal comfort model and introduced the PMV-PPD index. So he wanted me to go and be part of ASRE. I didn't know that being part of ASRE was such a long time career. But I'm glad that he persuaded me to go. Another, my mentor, I worked part-time in industry, was Dr. Brühl from the Danish company Brühl & Kjær, mainly for electronic instruments, where I helped them develop a series of instruments for indoor measurement of the indoor climate. At that time, I started traveling. And I remember one time I said to Brühl, I don't think I'm so happy about traveling that much. And he said, just wait, you will like it. Fortunately, it's going okay. So until now, as ASRE president, I can tell you, when I reached Chicago, I have been in 25 different countries. I have visited about 28 chapters and giving about 56 talks. And it has not been my presidential address every time, then it would be too boring. So that's some of the things you do when you are ASRE president. Now, we heard earlier that we have a strategic plan, and the strategic plan should guide the society and should also guide the presidents in the direction they want the society to focus on or go during their presidential year. And we have had, the last couple of presidents have took some of the initiatives from the strategic plan and focused on them during the presidential year. We had David Underwood focusing on making connection with people, Tim Wentz on adapting to new technology. And I'm focused a little on extend, and especially extending our community. And with the most focus on extending our global community. Many people, where you go around the world, and it's still like this, when they hear ASRE, they think, oh, it's an American society. But it is not, and you are proof of that. We are a global society, but the global community is not really aware about that we are a global society. We are still regarded, because of our name, as American society. Now, so it's important to show that we are global and increase our global activity. Also, maybe extend our technological horizon, look at new areas, and most important is, of course, extend our value to members. So when we look at the globe today, the global world, we can say the world has become smaller because whenever something happens in one part of the world, the rest of the world will know it because of the communication we have. And we also see ASRE is growing. We are getting slight increase in members, but we are getting increase also in chapters around the world. We have already looked at how we are international. I don't have to repeat that. And now we have the European region. I remember, I think 5-6 years ago, a At that time, I had just been on the ASWE board, and I was now Vice President of RIVA, on the RIVA board. And I said that my vision would be that someday we have an European region, that we had a close cooperation between RIVA and ASWE, maybe a combined office. And we are getting there. That has, I think it's very good that we have now an European region. We have talked a little about this morning also how many members, between 1,800 and 2,000. But one thing we have to think about as ASWE members is that in Europe there are about more than 100,000 members of National Society for HV&CNR. So we are a small number compared to all those people who are involved in HV&CNR as engineers here in Europe. That gives a big potential for also increasing the number of ASWE members, but it also tells me that we have to work with these people because we all often have, we have the same goals. So that's why Europe is a little different than some of the other regions. Well, also other regions, I can mention countries like Japan and Korea. They have very strong national society, and our chapter there are working close with them. Some president of the local society afterwards become president of the chapter. So often we see the same people working both on the National Society but also for the ASWE chapters. And as mentioned earlier, we are working on improving, especially now when we have a region, our relation with the National Society and especially also with RIVA. We have a task force working on that. And having an MOU, it's like you have to work on it like a marriage. It's not just enough to have a contract that you are married. You have to work at it so it will be a good marriage. So it requires that we do something with it and we follow what the MOU is saying. So we probably still have something to learn there, how we do that in the best way. But I think we are on a good way, and I think within my year, I think we will have set up a good way of collaborating, and we are also investigating the possibility of having an ASWE office in Brussels, and not only to help the ASWE members here in Europe, but also in our collaboration with United Nations in Paris, our collaboration with CIPSE in London. And as you also could see before, we had a lot of members who are not part of a chapter. And one reason is that often they have not seen the need to have an ASWE chapter. But the important thing is that the ASWE chapter is a conduit for the ASWE members to get influence on ASWE, to be able to decide who is going to be president, who is going to be on the different ASWE committee positions. So for ASWE, it's important that we have this structure. But we probably will see in Europe a structure also where you have like a kind of chapter within a national society. So one example here in Europe is ICA. They have an ASWE group. We have just revised the MOU. And what I would like the region here to discuss and try to find out, how can we give such an ASWE group or chapter within a national society, how can they be involved in the region? How can they, for example, be part of the CRC? Not full part as a chapter, but because there is a different, but that they can be involved and have a say, because half of our members at the moment is not in any typical ASWE chapter. So that's I think is something we should look at. I have asked the task force also to look at that, but that's very special. You have to discuss in the region how you see that could work. You have already been informed of we have this Associate Alliance, and we have a meeting in Brussels. I was just in Japan, the National Society there just had 100 years anniversary. And the day before, we had representatives from 6 or 7 different societies around the world. And they were all very keen on trying to establish a global alliance for HV and CNR. So I think there is a momentum, there is a support for that. And I hope after we have the meeting in April, which are at the same time, not the same time, but it is along with the RIBA meeting, where already 24 or 25 of the members of the Social Alliance are there, that we can take a step advanced for that. Now, one of the focus we also have, or I try to put more focus on also during this year, is developing economies. We have about 3,500 members in developing economies, and some of the challenges they have are quite different from the challenges that we're talking about here in Europe. According to WHO, there's about 5,000 who are dying every day, basically due to poor indoor air quality. I was just in India because we have now established a conference on developing economies which takes place every second year, and this was in Delhi in November. I don't know if you saw on television some pictures from Delhi. Well, most of you saw the cloud, you couldn't see anything. There was 200 meters high. Some of these conditions, they have several places. I was going to talk about indoor air quality and ventilation under these conditions, so I did change my talk to talk a little more about air cleaning. And, so some of the issues there are quite different. So that's why it's very good for us to work with the United Nations Environment Program, especially the ozone depletion, because they are very close at developing economies. And as you saw, we were recognized here last month where we got an award that you as ASHRAE members should be very proud of. Now, you can ask why should we be global, and maybe we should ask the 80% of our membership who is in North America, do they get any benefit about ASHRAE being global? I think you get benefit because you're getting, by having a region, you are now getting closer to ASHRAE. You will have people sitting on different ASHRAE committee. We will have a director at the board member. We have one in members council. So we get more influence. But we also need to show that there is a benefit for our base membership in North America. And the way I see it is that if you are global and a diverse membership, you have a stronger society. Many of the companies, well, we have not companies as members, but we have many members who come from companies. They work globally. So we also need to look at the world as a global world. Also exchange of technology. I think we got, most of the world, they got air conditioning from the US. On the other hand, for example, Japan provided the VRF system to the US. I think here from Europe it was like chill beam and displacement ventilation. We brought to the US. So there is the exchange of technology. And here ASHRAE can play a big role by having members in 130 countries, that we can get a faster exchange of new ideas and also of technologies that can be used worldwide. On the technological side, some of the focus we had this year, or we started before this year, was residential. I talked about developing economies. and standardization, which we already this morning have had some presentation regarding standardization. I think mostly ASRAE has been recognized for a society that focuses mainly on commercial building. But residential building is, I would say, in fact, more important. We spend about 90% of our time indoors doing work and transportation. In our home, it's about 50–60% of our time we spend at home, except the ASRAE president. And more energy is used in residential building than commercial building. So we should focus more on that. Not that ASRAE had not had some focus on it. We have for many years had a standard for indoor air quality in residential, 62.2. We have a standard for energy, 90.2. We are struggling a little by finishing a revision of that. We established, I think about 2 years ago, a residential building committee to increase our efforts in the residential area. We are now trying to establish a conference, basically taking over an existing conference and give it a more residential emphasis, which will be every third year. Residential will be part of the revised green building guide. We are just starting a design guide for multifamily. And we are working here with other societies who have been in the residential market for many years. But residential is often more difficult than commercial because the way you build residential building may often be much more different in the different regions. And I see in the future that some of the guidelines or other things ASRAE are producing will be produced at the regional level. That the regions, they produce some guidelines which are more tailored to issues in their region, and also when we now talk about, for example, residential. Now residential, as we spend so much time in our home, the health and comfort you have in your residences are probably more important for your health than the one you have at your workplace. One thing that people often forget is the sleep quality. When you don't have a good sleep, your productivity the next day goes down. And what we have looked at studies is that there's too little ventilation in bedrooms. One focus also is that in residential building, the occupant can change a lot of things. And often so that it influences both the indoor environment but also the energy use. We see big influence of occupant behavior on the energy use. So if you want to go to zero energy building, we have to look at how can we work with the occupant, how can we give them feedback so they still are not wasting energy but still have a good indoor environment. And I think in the future we are talking now about communities and cities. It's very important that the buildings will be part of that. And how will that influence the people in their own home that we are integrated in the smart grid? Standardization. This we saw there was a motion this morning. This is something we are really tackling because ASRAE, if we spend more money in being involved in organizing, have secretariat of ISO standards, we can do that. But what's the business model? Because we are not selling the ISO standard. ISO is selling the standards. I think we get a small license fee. Especially here in Europe, we are not going to use ASRAE standards in Europe. We use European standards. In our building codes, we refer to European standards. But of course, ASRAE standards can be used as a basis when we develop European standards. So that's what we should look at. So I think for us, we are still struggling with what is our, how much effort should we do international standards. We have some countries which are adapting our standards. They are rewritten so it fits more to the local circumstances. We have done a couple in the Middle East. That's one way also get use of our standard. But I think we don't have a clear idea, and that's why it takes a little time to, with this motion that was put up, to get a good answer to it. When we look at our members, one thing that we had 2 years ago, where some of you was involved, we had a big joint regional conference. And that's one way you can think about also. Now we have an European region. Many of you was used to be in the region at large. And to have this advantage by meeting people from completely different parts of the world, we can still do that by having joint regional conferences. And Members' Council have put up some kind of guideline if you want to do that. So one regional conference was the one between region at large and region 13 about 2 years ago. So what about students? We do a lot in ASRAE to get in contact at an early stage with the students. We have a lot of competitions for students. We also have different scholarships. And then there's one competition that we also support. This is not ASRAE competition, but that's the Solar Decathlon, which have also taken place here in Europe a couple of times, I think 3 times. And it will take place again in Europe in 2019. And what we have done at ASRAE, that is, we have some social events when the competition is taking place. And then we make sure that our chapters get in touch with the local university that may have a team, because often they need engineering assistance. So I think the same we would do now worldwide. There are also competitions in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, where we want to do the same support and try to get the young people there, get to know about ASRAE. I also would like that we, not only at the society level now, that we have, for example, MOU with RIVA and a lot of other organizations, but at the chapter level, that you try to engage with some chapter from another part of the world. We have said from different countries. Well, a lot of you here are from different countries. But if you do some activities with other chapters, you can have a combined web meeting. And that could be both for the student branches, and there will be some more, I think there's some more POE points for doing that. We heard about the Dubai training center. So these are some examples on how we are becoming more global. And even if we are not using the same units, we can still be global. And don't expect me to change the units of ASRAE. It will still be dual units the next several years. We speak different languages. I think the engineering language is basically broken English, so we can use that common language also. But when I look at what is common, no matter where you come from in the world, and that is laughter and smile. As one of the Danish American entertainer, he said, the smile is the shortest distance between two people. So it's very important now that when you get more active here in Europe with the European region, that we extend our community by adapting to a lot of other things, working with other societies and making more connections. Very important in that voluntary work, which is so tremendous in ASRAE, is that we also have fun. So very important is that don't forget to smile. Thank you.
Bjarni has been instrumental from day one for this new region. He has been a guiding light for a lot of us. I will speak for myself. He has been advising, providing a lot of support, and the mere fact that he is here with us today, as I said, being able, under a short notice of finally fixing the exact dates for this regional conference, to be here, actually hip-hopping across continents to, at least for almost 2 days, spend time with us, we greatly appreciate. And to show this appreciation, I would pass it on to our CRC General Chair, Professor Todorovic.
Branko. You know, I'm in a special situation here, and I will remind you on one of our meetings that was in America, and we were speaking. No, that should be. No. That's all the rules. And then we were it was a winter meeting, I think, in Asha, was on the east coast, south of New York. We were sitting on the table, and we were discussing about one new European standard or rules or something like that, which I was criticizing and discussing with his former director, Ole Fanger. And I said, who knows which word I used, who could write such a standard? And he was looking at me and said, thank you, Branko, very much. And I was thinking in that moment, what will happen if one day he will be our boss and president of Russia? My career, I heating, ventilating, and air conditioning will be finished. And still I think he remembered that. And what I could do today as host, first I was initiating to organize this great event. And then, as an editor of our journal, I was trying to find the most charming photos of him. It was not easy to find, but I found it. And that is
Because there are too many.
no, everything is all your soul, you know. And here you are, and your interview.
Okay.
That's for you.
Thank you.
And then I prepared one complete of the pens, hoping that when he returns back, he will say, Branko, don't worry, I forgot all that. Here is something with our number.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Branko.
And if you remember that, excuse me and forget.
I have forgiven you a long time ago.
You still remember?
Yes, I do. And Branko, don't go, because I also have a small gift for you. And it's a kind of my presidential gift. I know you're far away from our headquarters, but this is the ASRA headquarters in Lego. And it has its own very sustainable transportation besides that. And it's a very sustainable building. You can tear it down and you can build it up again somewhere else.
Thank you very much.
And
so you forgot.
Yes. Costas, for your leadership, you can guess what this is. It's the same gift. So for the region, and I think we are very lucky to have a director who has the experience which are needed to start up a new region.
Thank you. On behalf of the region, thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna reconvene. It's 2:30. We're due back to start at 3 o'clock. If you can make it a few minutes early, and we can all start because we have some additional activities before the closing of the business meeting. So if we're all here, maybe not, but at least I'm gonna ask you to make it within the next 15 minutes back to the room so that we can accommodate some additional activities before the closing of our business meeting this afternoon. Thank you very much.